Siblings and sisters and brothers in Christ, welcome to Tuesdays for Nurture. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Chris Davies, and I'm so excited to be here with each one of you from all over the country and all over the world. It feels really nice, and I still get excited every time we start one of these, and I get to see where you're coming from and what's going on, and even those who are watching alongside us on the YouTube. Just so excited to be here with you. Tuesdays for Nurture is a webinar series where we faithfully focus on education for the people of God. We have topics from faith-filled politics to interviews of key leaders to how-tos in congregational life and the impacts of current realities on the life of the church. And each webinar will include clear suggestions about what you can do to change the church and the world towards the world God imagines for all of us. So moderating and hosting today, I want to introduce to you to the Reverend Phiwa Langeni, and they are the Ambassador for Innovation and Engagement. I think I might have messed up your title, Phiwa, you can correct me. I'll let them introduce what we're doing today and the conversation that is to follow.
Good greetings, everyone. It's so great to see all the places that you are physically, even as we're connecting over this digital format. Great to see some names of people I know and names of people I have yet to know. I'm very excited to be here with you all. Chris, you do have my title correct as long as it is. I'm the Ambassador for Innovation and Engagement, and I work in the Center for Analytics, Research and Development and Data card office here at the national setting. And you may know us from those who basically produce the yearbook and the statistical profile and other, trends and surveys that you may interact with. They usually come from the card office. I'm excited to bring with me my good friend and colleague, Jody Benton. If they want to say a quick hello so we can see their face.
Hi, y'all. It's good to see you. Good to be with you.
Thank you, Jody. And so today we are going to be talking about, in particular, this theory of change workshop that I've been engaged in kind of helping develop and tweak and rework with in collaboration with the United Church of Canada and the Disciples of Christ. And so yeah, since I started this role in April of last year, it's hard to believe it's almost a year. This has kind of been where my time and energies have been. So I'm really excited that we were able to put out our newly revised and collaborative theory of change workshop that just ended a couple of weeks ago. And Jody was a participant in that. And so I thought we'd be kind of cool to, just have a conversation style so y'all could be a part of, a little back and forth with Jody and me, and just talking about the theory of change and this particular workshop and how it impacted Jody's work. And, see if y'all have any questions. The last portion of this session, we want to make sure there's ample time to do some Q&A. If you have any questions for me or us, we'd love to hear from you. So pretty briefly, I kind of want to just talk about, my role, who I am, how I got to this position with a really long title. So my beginning to work here at the United Church of Christ at the national setting, at the time of our interviews, the pandemic had not been a thing yet. And part of my work was to, engage and meet folk in different areas of the country to get a sense for, what innovative things our local churches are doing, and to be able to kind of gather that innovation and bring it together in one central location, and to help other churches, hear from, innovations that other churches elsewhere are doing, and to create an innovation hub of sorts, right? So we can get a sense for, what great, amazing stuff our churches are doing in the local church. Now with the pandemic, it halted travel. So I haven't left yet. But it did, offer us this opportunity to be able to use these technologies that we have available to us to engage and collaborate more deeply with the United Church of Christ in particular. In their EDGE network, so their innovative arm of their denomination. They've been doing these theory of change workshops for the last few years, and it's been very successful. All the participants they've had go through it are grant recipients for their funding there. And just hearing the stories about how the ministries they supported were transformed greatly, and the impact that was, being realized across their country, the vast country of Canada, really for me piqued my interest and thought, why aren't we collaborating with them in this particular project? And so the last few months I've been working to do that, and we're excited that we have been able to kind of tweak it, revise it, and engage some of our resources to be able to offer future endeavors for this theory of change, kind of a stretched out workshop for us. And Jody will speak a little bit about their experience in just a moment here. Some of my excitement though is being able to collaborate and share, in the ways that they've been successful in running this program, but being able to also bring our gifts into the conversation, being able to share how we can together do this thing that we're all called to do. It's not the same work that we're called to do, but that we're able to like bring together what we've got and what we know and what we can share to do the greater work ahead for us. And so we get to learn from them, some very practical, logistical ways in which we can engage innovation and to kind of incorporate innovation into what we do, and shift the places that we can shift to make that happen more naturally for us. And then we can kind of help them, some of the evaluation, the evaluatory pieces of, how do we make sure that what we say we're doing is actually happening, and how do we capture what we're doing in a way that we can scale it and then share it more widely with communities across the countries. And so we've been able to partner with the Disciples of Christ as well, and they're doing amazing stuff, especially with their like new church plants, and just all sorts of like great leadership programs that they've gotten. So these really solid tri-denominations are coming together, and I get goosebumps just thinking about it, and that I get to participate in this in some manner excites me greatly. And today, at least, hopefully we can share a little bit about that, and maybe you are a future participant for these theory of change workshops that we are deliciously putting together among these three denominations. So we'll have a lot more to kind of delve into it. And so I want to invite Jody though to kind of share, who they are, what they're up to, like what is their setting, and then maybe to share a few words about their, I guess their invitation or entry into this theory of change a workshop. And then we'll kind of just talk about what is the theory of change, and we'll just kind of talk back and forth, and then we'll have some Q&A. Jody?
Great, thanks. I like it that I can say about Phiwa, I knew you when. Phiwa and I were church planters together in the Michigan conference, and that's how we became acquainted. And Phiwa has been one of the important people in supporting my understanding of what it means to be a church planter and how the gospel relates to that. And we've had fabulous conversations that have been encouraging and inspiring. And so to be able to do have that kind of conversation in this setting is really an honor. I appreciate the opportunity, Phiwa. Thanks. So I'm Jody Betton. I'm new to the UCC as of 2012. I came from a more conservative Christian denomination and got into a little hot water there. I was brought up in heresy charges for supporting the LGBTQ community in that denomination, and was glad to come to a place where I could be a good ally and support celebrate all gender identities and sexual orientations. And that was actually one of the starting places for our church in Traverse City. Traverse City is in northern Michigan. It's a rural area. Traverse City proper is a little bright progressive spot in northern Michigan. But as I explored that area, I realized that there was not one denomination, not one church in any denomination, not even the mainline denominations, Episcopalian, UU, Presbyterian, that was flying a rainbow flag or had a rainbow flag on their website. And so we said, this is an entry point. This is a place for us to engage with folks who are on a spiritual journey, who want to be in community with others who are like-minded. And we started by reaching out to Up North Pride, which is the largest volunteer pride event in Michigan, and actually gave the blessing the first year for the Pride Parade, and that was really exciting. Since then, we've worked in the area of immigration. We've co-founded an organization called Immigrants Are Our Neighbors, which is bringing pressure on the sheriff's office. The sheriff in northern Michigan, the sheriff in Grand Traverse County, collaborates with ICE, and the city of Traverse City is a place where many of our migrant neighbors do not feel comfortable. We've also been involved in the housing ministry in northern Michigan. There's an organization called the Coalition to End Homelessness, and one of our members of our faith community is the director, and we have some property there, and so we've been exploring ways to use that property to bless the community. I love starting a new church because it's starting. I think in my heart, I'm an innovator. I love to imagine new stuff. Sometimes I move the furniture around in my house just to have something new to look at. And I'm not in favor of change just for change, but I love that our God is one who says, I am making all things new. And it's a privilege and honor to be able to start a new church and see what God can do as we connect with people, build relationships, and listen for the still speaking God.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And so much truth, and it makes sense that we get along well. There's so much overlap in what you've just said and kind of my own experiences as well. So let's kind of get into this, right? So theory of change, like what even is that? I'll admit I didn't know what it was before April of 2020. I'll admit that I still don't really know what it is in February of 2021. Beyond, just that, a theory of change is a process as well as a tool, right? So it is a process that kind of helps a change leader or a faith community, or really not even beyond the faith, right? Like just different communities or organizations to be able to align themselves, right? Their beliefs, their values, their mission, whatever language you want to use, right? So it allows you to align your mission and your values in a way that allows you to make whatever actions you're making to support what it is that you say you believe in, right? So you're not just doing stuff because you've always done it this way. You're not just doing stuff because you don't know what else not to do, right? But that you understand your mission more deeply, and then you ask different questions to get to the actual work that you feel called to do, right? One example I use often, and so you've heard me speak about this, you've heard about it already, so sorry, but not really sorry, because it's a great example. So there's one group that kind of showed up, right, to do this theory of change workshop, and one of their questions, right, is like, they were their church is offering a really stellar after school program. I mean, it was well funded. The program was something you'd want to sign your kids up for, right? But they were struggling because they weren't getting people into their doors, and so they led with this problem of people are coming to the program, right? And so they were grinding their wheels, trying to figure out how to get people to come to their program. And so engaging in this theory of change, it allowed them to see that was really just a symptom of their issue, right? But rather, when they got a little bit deeper into the process and they uncovered more and more layers, it came to be discovered that a lot of these kids who they were trying to invite into this program were kids in a single parent working family households. And so they didn't have a way to even get the kids to the school to engage in this, or into the church to engage in this program. And so then it realized, that their problem wasn't about bringing more people into the church. Their problem was about supporting these single parent households in, being able to transport and, bring their kids to this program, right? So it's this very similar issue, which had the same results at the end of it, but by switching their efforts to not about bringing people into the church, but rather supporting these single parent households, it formed the whole project and allowed them, to get the results that they were looking for, but their energies went to where the actual problem was, right? So it's not a problem about people showing up, but rather a problem of lack of support among the population that they were trying to bring. So things like that, where it's like, I would never have even thought about, this problem that maybe keeps you up at night, and you think about it day in and day out, and you eat it with your Wheaties in the morning as a breakfast of your champions, and you don't really get to the solutions that you're seeking, or even like a breakthrough, even if it's not a specific solution, right? And so the theory of change, again, so it's a process that allows you to like revisit this thing, this project, this whatever it may be, this ministry that you have that you're trying to process, and it kind of unwraps it enough to get you to like the actual problem. And then with the focus on the actual problem that's creating this obstacle for you to be able to do this ministry, you then start finding the tools that you need, and your energy are going into actually that thing that will lead to the results that, or maybe different results, to this thing that you're hoping to do. And so it's a process that, once you've gone through it, you end up with a tool, like a logic model and a theory of change, which becomes, kind of like a strategic way in which, you speak to any other stakeholders. So whether that's like, council members or community members or funders or whomever that may be, right? Volunteers. So it allows you, right, to engage this process that gives you this tool that will help you then bring on the right people to help you work on this project, this change that needs to happen in your mission, ministry, organization, etc. I hope it kind of makes sense, So I'll take a sidestep here. Maybe Jody can hop in maybe with some, if they want to share any examples, or maybe how they, their experience of having encountered this theory of change for the first time.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. I was pretty excited to be invited into the workshop. We are at an edge, so to speak, in our ministry. The Michigan Conference owns 20 acres of property in proximate to Traverse City, and we called a community meeting with all the folks that we had come to know and invited them to have us vision what could be possible on that property. We imagined, organic gardens and beautiful walking paths and maybe a labyrinth and places where people could come and experience nature and be nurtured. We imagined a community center where local nonprofits could gather and share resources and meet the folks that they're in ministry with. We imagined a bed and breakfast. It just so happens that our first place where we lived in Traverse City, my partner was the manager of a bed and breakfast, and that's how we paid our rent. And so we had some experience, and it became this kind of serendipity that, wow, we could build a bed and breakfast. It's a need in this tourist economy, and it could serve other purposes too. It could provide sanctuary for women who experience domestic violence or people who experience domestic violence. It could be sanctuary for migrants who are potentially being deported. It could be place for homeless people in the off season. There were many ministries that we could imagine. In order to move forward, we needed to have control of what would happen on that property, and because it was because it's owned by the Michigan Conference, there was a barrier. And so we worked with the Michigan Conference, and when I began the Theory of Change workshop, this was on the forefront. This was the pertinent issue for me. And in fact, the week in the middle of the workshop was the week when the Michigan Conference Board met to actually give us site control of the property. So while that was the presenting problem for us, that problem went away. And what I realized is the bigger problem is, how do we nurture a church which at all settings, the local church, the association, the conference, and the national setting, encourages innovation? And so obviously, Phiwa, that's why you have your job, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. And how do we bring that to the conference level? How do we bring that to the association level? How do we bring that into our local churches in a really intentional kind of way? One of the things that I came across often in this Theory of Change workshop is what you measure is what happens. What you count is what you produce. So if we're going to be a church that's innovating, then we have to figure out a way to measure and count innovation. It's not going to look like, checks in a box or notches on a belt or money in the bank. It's going to look different. I don't know what it looks like, but I began to think about my Theory of Change project as kind of that umbrella. How can the organizations that I'm involved in, the Michigan Conference, the United Northern Association, and the local church, how can we then be the organizations that promote and nurture innovation and change and making all things new, as I said in my introduction. So that's enough for a minute.
Thank you, Jody. So we've got a Q&A question here that's just come up. And it says here, does that mean we need a kind of project management which relates to church's vision? That's a great question. And possibly yes, if that, your project or the vision that you have in your community needs such a thing, right? So I mean, in some ways, right, it is, this tool can be it may produce the need for a project management, right? And then that helps you like shape what you need to do to get to this project that you need. I guess I also want to like take a minute too to say out loud that innovation is quickly becoming a buzzword, right? I mean, you can't go through a whole day nowadays, right, in this pandemic living, without hearing or seeing the word innovation, at least once. And it's not. Innovation is a lot of stuff, but I'll tell you what it's not, right? It's not just the flashy, the newest, sparkliest, devices or, buildings or brand new programs that are, earth shattering. Sometimes and often my favorite kind of innovation is the quiet kind that happens that people don't even realize is necessarily happening, right? The kind that all of our local churches have had to contend with in the last about a year now, right? The kind of innovation that it kind of dips into resilience. It's closely related to survival, but not survival necessarily, right? Survival is just like hanging on to its life at whatever cost, right? But then it loses its mission and purpose, right? But for me, like the idea of resilience, right? Like innovation and resilience are so closely related where it's like it does, tap into the need to survive, but more so, it's a kind of survival that is rooted in purpose, right? And so I've been so thrilled to see all the various kinds of innovation that's already happening across the United Church of Christ in our local churches in all the different settings, and we don't use that word necessarily, right? And so my hope is, as I'm interacting with more and more of you in the different communities across the nation, to like help hold up a mirror to let you see innovation is already here, right? And so how then do we, so it may not be necessarily a project management, right? But how do we tap into the innovative spirit, which to me honestly is synonymous with God, a God who innovated something out of nothing repeatedly, whether that was the literal universe or, food on the side of a hill, right? So there's innovation throughout our sacred text. And like we are all connected to this innovative sacred text that is already at work and at play in each of our settings. And so it may literally just to be a mind shift that helps us see more clearly where innovation is already happening, and then to do it on purpose, right? There's some things that are just happening magically, maybe like the, just whatever may be happening that we don't really notice or pay attention to. Some of this theory of change is to help us see, or discern more clearly, what resources we have available, what things we're doing well, then keep doing that. What we're doing in Traverse City doesn't necessarily translate well to Duluth, whichever state of Duluth that may be, right? but there may be certainly elements of, like the essence of what's happening in Traverse City might be translatable, but doing what Jody and them are doing in Traverse City can't travel to some other space, right? So innovation in the widest sense of the word, right, that speaks to being able to tap into this call that we each of us has individually and collectively into what can yet be done, in this time, and not to, fall into the pattern of despair and like scarcity, but to lean into abundance and, what some may even call impossibility, because we believe in a God who does the impossible. Certainly that's why I'm here still, call myself a Christian, is just this innovative possibility of what can be in a world that is so desperate and ready for something else than what we currently have, both within the church and beyond it. I hope that kind of is helpful. Do you have any other questions here? Gus has got a question here. To bring innovation into local churches, we measure, count, and quantify exactly what? That's a great question, and one that I like to keep in front of me. I know we've had, and especially, as a member of the card team that sends out annual requests, for your numbers, how much money, how much attendance, how many people, etc. Right? And that we might be able to engage, like Jody was saying a little bit earlier, what do we want to measure, right? We don't have to measure that always. I mean, we do, because it helps us kind of keep our historical record, and that's, the yearbook is essential for like many other reasons, right? But I would definitely push and encourage us, to consider, what else might be measured, to help us, I guess discern more clearly, right, the spirit and movement of like what's happening. Some of the questions we've, begun asking on the yearbook as well. So it's not just, how many people come through our doors, but how many how many community folk or community engagements do we have with the local community, right? How many community partners are we engaging in? I don't remember exactly how it's worded, but we can start measuring in that sense, right? How are we collaborating beyond just keeping our lights on and keeping butts in pews and having a pastor at the pulpit, or a leader preaching every week, right? And so literally asking different questions requires for us to think differently, and we'll land in a different place of answering. It could be the same landing point, right? But the process of answering differently then uncovers there's countless possibilities that weren't maybe obvious, in our kind of asking the same questions and answering the same answers. So sometimes it's literally just taking a moment and to, kind of zoom out a little bit and ask a different question, which allows us to get to different answers. And so again, it's not to say that, you need to land somewhere else. You could land in the exact same place, but the process of answering in a different way uncovers so much along the way, which is why I love, this, the theory of change, right? Is like it as a process, you'll have a tool which you can use in different settings, right? And it's not like a, step one, how to XYZ, right? But rather it invites you into why, right? So not a how to, but a why to. Why are we doing this? We start asking that why, and then ask the next why, the 5 whys. You ask like the next layer of why, the next layer, and so on and so forth. All of a sudden, we've uncovered this purpose that has been already here and all around us this whole time. And now we're able to engage it in a way that is faithful, that is illuminating, that is life-sustaining and giving, and not just for us, but for those around us.
May I jump in, Phiwa?
Yes, please.
So someone just put in the chat, consider hours of volunteer time, require tracking the time. One of the churches in the Michigan, Michigan conference was counting something they called ministry touches. So people could record for themselves. When did they touch base with a neighbor and bring a meal in because there was someone hurting? Or when did they check in with the elderly person across the street who needed their driveway shoveled? Or when did they, all the ways that we behave as church, as God's presence of love in the world, beyond what we do in the church, right? In the building or when we gather. I love that, because we're beginning to compel or inspire this notion that we are the church best when we are God's love out there in the world, right? And we can do all the things that we do within the community to care for each other, and that's important. But there are lots of communities that do that are not church, right? So I think those kinds of measurements, they say something about our theology and our ecclesiology. What does it mean to be church, and why do we do this thing anyway? So I had one other thing and it's gone. I'll think of it. Yeah. So ministry touches, I think, yeah, we're just talking about measuring, and it will take us a minute to figure out what are those things we're measuring that then encourage the kinds of behaviors that we want to exhibit or the ways we want to be in the world.
I love that. Thank you. So yeah, so I mean, we're gonna continue, for maybe another 15 or so minutes with questions. Um, and so, Chris, if you'd love to hop in, I'd encourage you to do so at any time. But we'll look at the next couple of questions here. Hello, Chris.
Hey, as you were talking, I did want to mention that there's a lot of resources that we have that local congregations can use in conversation with what you are adding to through the theory of change conversation. So I'm thinking about things like at one point we had the Just World for All question deck, which was a tool for leaders to start asking some of these questions in their congregations and in their communities about getting closer to the fifth layer of the why. Also thinking about the Be the Church assessment that came out of CARD a few years back that teaches the logic model, not just where are we, where do we want to go, but where is our energy, where's our communal energy, and how do we define our own metrics in conversation with what you are saying. So I wanted to lift those two things up before going to the next questions, which is from Karen. How do you create a congregation excited about innovation? Innovation is usually a business term.
That's great. I'm a bit of a word nerd myself. I'm also a small business owner and I'm a pastor. And I've learned to take on the title of innovator as well, right? And so to me, those things are not incompatible because they all reside in me. And so with that as my posture, right, coming into this, there are so many biblical spots in which we can point to innovation, right? It doesn't use that word in particular, but like Jody kind of quoted earlier, believe it's Isaiah, God is doing a new thing. Do you not perceive it? Like if that's not innovation, I don't know what is, right? Where again, I was even mentioning, like creation, like literally making something out of nothing, like that, like our God is an innovator from the beginning through our now and certainly beyond, right? And so there's so many like really great stories, even like the miracles of Jesus, that was innovative, right? Whether literal or rhetorical, like there's so much innovation that is woven all throughout our Bible, this biblical text, and in our Christian traditions that we can kind of tap into. And so to engage a congregation maybe that is resistant to, I guess, the business aspect of innovation, pick a word that works better for you, but ultimately, right, the essence of innovation is woven into our Christian story. There's everything about Jesus and what we know about him, I'm saying, like is compatible with innovation, and again, I was saying earlier, innovation is not necessarily about, what is like this, the fanciest, sparkliest, newest stuff, right? But could literally be something as simple as, transforming how it is that your workflow goes from, a Sunday after worship to Sunday worship day, right? So how the bulletin is getting made, or how the sermon, or whatever that may be, right? You can even be innovative about the ways in which you do the tedious parts, or the kind of like the business portions of doing and being church. You can innovate that as well. How do we do so in a way that again, like kind of like is more, I don't want to say efficient, but like that infuses life back into the why we do what we do.
I think about our understanding of membership. I think this is a way that we're innovative. It's it's not traditional. There are many people in our community who will never come to a worship service because they've been so hurt by the church, and that's how they know church. But they are involved in our mission projects. They are involved in donating a variety of things and ways, volunteering and so on. So so to be innovative with our how do I report then for at the national setting who our members are when we don't have, baptized? I mean, if people want to be baptized, I'm happy to take them to the lake and dunk them and baptize them or sprinkle them, or, that's all good. But we have to think out of the box in terms of how we count, right? How we assess what membership means. If we're going to appeal to people who say, never going to be a member of a church again. Just an example.
I do want to point out that this is one of these places where two seemingly opposing things are both true. We do still continue to have to pay attention to the numbers and the members and the money. And at the same time, we are developing consistently other metrics for which we can continue to measure our impact. So for those of you, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can continue to report that, but that is a necessity and a legal necessity for the United Church of Christ that we do have those inputs as well. I want to lift up another question that's coming through from Kimberly Wood. So, sometimes the change isn't doing something new. It's noticing that we are doing something naturally or traditionally, but connecting it to the intent of our ministry. So asking why invites us to sort out things that we don't have that purpose with and can be superfluous, and things that give life to the ministry. An innovation then may mean tweaking something we do to truly support ministry.
I would say absolutely yes. It's so easy, for the sake of order and like efficiency to, get caught up in just like doing the things that you're used to doing, right? On Monday, I read the scripture. On Tuesday, I'm looking up commentaries. On Wednesday, I start drafting my sermon. On Thursday, right? And so I can, like, in a very rote sort of way, right, just do all the things that I do to make sure that on Sunday there's a service that, and a sermon for it, right? And then sometimes, I get lost in the details of doing what I'm supposed to do, right? And then I lose the spirit that's continuously, speaking to us, right? A God who is still speaking. Like, we're in the UCC, right? So I guess I'm proposing that, this innovation is about, making sure that we're not just speaking about a God who is still speaking, but that we're listening to a God who is still speaking. And how is our listening happening as we're paying the bills, as we are preparing bulletins, as we are engaging the different kinds of projects and ministries that we're doing, as we're responding to a pandemic, as we are, fill in the blank, right? All the things that we're doing and being to, like, engage this work and identity of church, right? And so being able to do so with the space of, why are we here? Why are you church? Not just, in this, kind of philosophical, intellectual exercise, right? But why are you church where you are? Here's a difficult question I've asked, communities that I've gotten the privilege of serving. If your church today just magically poofed, right, just ceased to be there, would your community notice? It's a really uncomfortable question, because we want to say yes, but if we really dig down deeply, would they notice, right? And so again, it's not as a judgment, but rather a hope that we can start asking a different set of questions, like, why does God want us here? Why are we here today, right? Sometimes the most faithful response is to, I know for some of us, and like increasingly more because of this pandemic, sometimes it is to faithfully close our doors, right? And it's not even to speak of failure, because like that word is not even in my panel of, especially we're talking about innovation and what it means to do and be church, right? But like, sometimes that means we're not trying to bring people into our doors at any means, at any cost, right? But rather, how are we moving beyond our doors, right? I get this question a lot, like, how do we get more people in here? Well, how do we get more of us out there? And once you've answered that question, then let's revisit the other one, right? About bringing people in here. right? And so it's asking different questions for the same thing. We don't know why they're not coming here. Well, let's find out where they are and what are we missing about where they're gathering, right? And maybe we'll learn something about how to do and be church, right? Some of the most holy things have happened to me in places that were not church, right?
I do think it's sometimes helpful to think about the historical context of how our churches have evolved when we begin to think about innovation. For example, the membership model as a whole is something that evolved after some along the way in alignment with the ways in which, particularly at that point, white society was interacting with the world after World War II. It assumed that one person of every household would be able to be on a committee and make the help the church function. That model, which is a context of its time, doesn't fit a lot of us now. And when I think about innovation and the work that Phiwa is really critically involved with, I know that their work centers a lot on small churches and rural churches. And I'm thinking about how Steve Johnson defines innovation as finding the places of where the adjacent possible is. What that usually means is that you have everything you need in front of you. You don't need anything extra. There's a creative leap from here to there. I'm thinking about how all of you listening adapted into suddenly knowing how to use all of these programs because we had to. I'm thinking about how all of you listening adapted to like, oh my goodness, I need to be doing a letter writing campaign at my church right now. How you adapted to be like, okay, the most innovative story I've heard over the course of these programs was something along the lines of, okay, a church is doing Zoom worship now, but Mary doesn't know how to use Zoom. So Barbara will Zoom in and call Mary and hold the phone up to what's happening so Mary can participate. And oh my goodness, this is innovation. We trip up on the language, but ultimately, I would bet that many of you who are listening have already engaged in this kind of creative work in service to meeting the needs of your members. And Phiwa, what I hear you saying is stretching that beyond the needs of the members and into the community of where are we, why are we, and what is God calling us to do and be here and now. So I wanted to kind of give that context in the midst of spurring more conversation in, particularly with gratitude.
I love that language, adjacent possible. I think that's when I look at the history of New Waves, which is short. The Michigan Conference had bought the piece of property that we're going to be building on, and there was a need for housing. So as that community planning group came together and said, we need housing, you got land, what can we do here? It was a natural, innovative step, right? Churches don't normally build houses, but here we go. So that language is really inspiring. Adjacent possible. Thanks.
So if people want to learn more about your work and the work of doing innovation and the theory of change of where are we, where do we want to be, and how do we do the work to get there, where can they learn?
You beat me to it. I was just double checking we didn't have any questions that were yet unanswered. Y'all, this is like hot off the press, and I say that it's not even off the press. So it's off the press. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. If you would like to be alerted when we have like our new theory of change workshops, as we're like I said, we just finished like a pilot program of like the reconfigured collaborative workshop. So if you like to be alerted for when the new ones are available, I'm gonna ask Jennifer, I think, to just drop in the chat here, and we'll have it also at the end of the webinar, I believe. My email address, langeniP@ucc.org. And I'm going to ask you to use a subject line, innovation interest. That way, when we actually have the details ready, I could just search for that. And then everyone who's emailed me can get, I will send that information to you directly. So again, we're working to get the new workshops basically scheduled, and I can send you that information. So again, it's langenip at ucc.org, and it's typed in the chat window, and I believe it's going to be on the recorded version somewhere, somehow.
And if you're watching on YouTube, it's going to be beneath this window in the descriptions.
Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure what is where and when and how, but hashtag innovation, right? Also, can we just pause for a second? Like we are in the future right now, right? That we are in different locations, speaking to people in even more locations about, innovating
all over the world,
right? And how we can do church and be church, and not just, if you missed it now, you can watch this later. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is, what a time to be alive. I love and I hate tech, but if we're gonna have it, we might as well put it to work for the good of all, right? So yes, so Langeni at ucc.org with the subject innovation interest. And then as soon as we have those dates available, I can send those out to those of you who have messaged me. And there are other ways I'm sure we'll connect and interact. And as we have that more available, we'll I'm sure it'll be on the website at some point. I'm just not sure where, as we're kind of revamping that. I also want to invite y'all to this unconference called it's the Hopeful Economics Unconference. It's going to be held March 3 through 5. It is the United Church of Canada is kind of like spearheading this, and I'll be one of the guests, and in collaboration again with the UCC and the Disciples of Christ. That's us in the United Church of Canada. It's you definitely want to go check it out. It's just been dropped in the link. It'll be below us if you're on YouTube. The Hopeful Economics Unconference coming up next month, actually, March 3rd through 5th. So definitely check that out and sign up if you would like to do so. Hope to see you there.
I'm so excited for this ongoing work and all of the entry points that are possible. One of the things that I will offer before we begin to close is that for those of you who hear the word innovation and start to oh God, not another thing, what I would offer to you is a releasing of your shoulds. That which you should be doing doesn't need to direct you, because likely everything you need, all of the wisdom, all of the resources, all of the creativity that you and your community have access to is already there, and it doesn't need to be flashy. And I know that I'm repeating things that Phiwa has already said, so I'm going to acknowledge that as well, even as you are blessed unto releasing the shoulds. So in closing, Phiwa and Jody, do you have a final blessing or something that you hope that those who have listened have heard in what you've been saying throughout, starting with Jody?
I think for me, the thing that has blessed me the most when I think about innovation is others who are being innovative. So hearing the stories, being inspired by what else is going on. I think that's why Phiwa and I have these amazing conversations, because we're always sharing what new stuff we're doing. And the new church planters in Michigan, I want to give a shout out to them. They're just amazing people. To others who are doing innovative things within their churches, the folks who were in the Theory of Change workshop that I was in, amazing things are happening. For me, if you're wondering about innovation, go find some people who are doing it and watch and learn and be excited and inspired. And who knows, you get adjacent to what's possible.
I love that. I love that. So I want to, again, I'm aware that, my relationship with innovation is not maybe normative, if you will. And so maybe technology is not your thing. Maybe you like everything the way it was. You don't like change. It's not your thing, right? But I want to invite you maybe into like a new relationship with innovation. So whether you're into change or not, just consider even your very life, your existence has been an experiment in innovation. That you are here today, if you look back even a short period, and certainly however long your life has been, you have been wrapped in innovation your entire life. Everything about this God we worship is innovative, right? And so again, if that word doesn't work for you, pick a different one, right? Because life is much too full of possibility, full of God moments to resist this innovative God who is calling us into something new, not just for the sake of newness, but something new for the sake of hope and love and enoughness for each and every person on this planet and every part of this planet, right? Like not just the human portions. And so I want to invite you into just revisiting what innovation might feel like to you, you know, if that's not really your thing, or if it is your thing, how might you engage it in a way that is more invitational to and with someone maybe who's a little bit more resistant to it, you know? So again, not like in a judgmental way, you are where you are who you are. And all of that is an act of innovation at its very core. And so I love that about you. I love that about us. I love that about this denomination in particular that gives us the space and the possibilities for dreaming together with God a new something for all of us so that we can have life and to have it abundantly.
You're all leaning into the theology of Octavia Butler there. I heard you. God is change. So, if those of you listening have found something that your heart can rest on, that you can use in assessing who God is calling you and your community to be, and that inspires you to keep going one day at a time, today and every day in service to the living God, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Additionally, I got a little echo on me. I do want to let you know that some of those metrics, we talked about those things being both and. It is the time to do the reporting now. So you can report to the Data Hub what those metrics are. Do know that there will be a follow-up information about how to report your digital metrics. This is the complicated stuff of how to report the metrics that are present in terms of who has been at worship and all of those other pieces. And that helps us know how to support you best. There's going to be a follow-up survey about the digital stuff. Don't worry, we didn't forget it. And that deadline is all the way through the month. We're going to get that cleaner in these next webinars coming up, including, but not limited to, upcoming webinars such as worship on Thursday will be Latinx worship with the words and prayers of particularly Latinx folk of African descent. So we're going to feature that on this Thursday upcoming. And then next Tuesday is, I got so excited about our conversation. Next Tuesday, we're going to talk together about equity and equality in the movement for racial justice in a global way. So join us with Associate General Minister Karen Georgia Thompson, and we will be in conversation again with efforts that are aligned in the United Church of Christ and the United Church of Canada. Finally, if you want to learn about nonviolent action, do know that we have the MLK Day of Service, which will be this upcoming weekend, and you can participate and learn alongside us there. Whew. So for all of these resources, which you will receive if you signed up for one, you're going to be on the email list for all of them. So you will know that these are coming. We thank you for your continued support for the programming of these ongoing digital programs and for our collective work as the United Church of Christ in this time, in this place. We are asking all those same whys. What is our role now? That Jody and Phiwa brought into the conversation. So thank you for everything. And I would ask, Jody, would you do us the great honor of praying us into the rest of our day?
Thanks for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to be and an honor to be with you. I invite you to take a deep breath. Let the Spirit's energy fill your lungs. Breathe it out into the world. The peace and love that we long for God to bring into the world. Take another deep breath. Experience God's love for you. You are God's beloved, and breathe out. And feel your feet on the ground and your seat on the chair, and have confidence that God goes with us. God of the dreamers and visionaries, we thank you and praise you that you sustain and uphold, that you are already making a way as you give us the Christ to illuminate the path, as you send your Spirit to enliven our souls. Bless us as we seek to be your presence in the world in whatever ways you have already created for us to be. We thank you for this church, for these your people who are being your presence in the world. We thank you and praise you. In the name of Jesus the Christ and in the power of the Spirit we pray. And all God's people said, amen.
Siblings and sisters and brothers in Christ, if this conversation has moved you, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or your soul, please consider donating towards the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help programs like this in the essential work of the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed into the rest of your day and know that you are not alone, and we are holding you in prayer. Amen.